There we go.
Got it. Yeah. So what I'd like to do is kind of what we did during the baseline is if you kind of walk me through the lesson, tell me a little bit about it, tell me what went well, and maybe some areas that you think you could improve upon, and then I'll give you my comments.
Okay, well, I started off with a assessment of what we did from the previous class. That's more just to get data. Um, that's more for activity three. Um, Usually, this is the most assessments I've given my kids like ever. Um, Usually I just give them a quiz maybe once a month and then an exam every 3 months. So they're not they weren't too happy when I said, "Oh, we're going to do a quiz," and then I showed them what the quiz was. They're like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." So we started off with an assessment just to get a handle of what they were on. Um, Greeted the students. Chris, who's in the thumbnail of the video, before class, he came to me and he's like, "I'm not having a really good day." So I just let him do his own thing and let him be by himself. That's why he wasn't really participating much in class. And that's why in the data collection he got zeros across the board. But for me, that's not a reflection of his effort. Um, that's just something I have to do for Moreland. That's not something that my school has to do. Um, then we went into we finished the assessment. Something I should have done is put the assessment and the lesson together instead of just doing it two separate things. I've found that that wasted a bit of time. Um, the school internet was not being uh, wasn't working very well, so one of my students used the internet. I turned my phone, which I was using to film, into a hotspot, and he wanted to know what the password was. So I told him what it was so he can get on to Nearpod. Um, we then went through, we watched a little video just to set up the reading that I had planned for them. Um, and instead of just watching the video for watching the video's sake, I put questions in, uh, which I really like with Nearpod. So it wasn't just, hey, let's watch a video and waste a couple minutes. They actually had to pay attention, and you could see in real time who was answering, who wasn't answering, were they answering correctly or incorrectly. So next class, which was on Thursday, I could go back and reteach stuff that I found that they had missed. Um, Then I gave them two readings. I separated them. We had like I would never say this to my students, but we had the all-star team and the not so all-star team, but I kind of broke it up a little bit. As you could see, one of the students was giving like a running translation of the reading to another classmate, helping them out. I thought that was really interesting. I never saw that student demonstrate that kind of ability before. Um, so I thought that was really good. Um, I gave them question sheets just to give them some focus based on the readings, so that they could do that. At the beginning of the year, I taught my students how to read like more effectively. Like how I was taught to read. You read with a highlighter, although nobody brought a highlighter today, not even me. But usually, because when you're in university, you don't have a lot of time to mess around, so you have to, you know, like for me, key points was yellow, interesting things would be green, and then when you go back to study, you're not wasting your time reading full passages. So it's something that I've taught the kids to do before, and did that for differentiation. I gave translated copies. All my instructions were translated on the board. so I didn't have to tell them what a jigsaw was. It's not the first time we've done jigsaws. Because I know Lexi made a comment on my baseline that I didn't explain what a T chart was, but we had done it before. We had done it several times before, so they're used to it. Um, Classroom management was great again. Um, Pizza, they had pizza for lunch, so they knew they knew what was expected of them. Um, I'm sure if I didn't buy them pizza, they would act the same. I've never had any behavioral issues from any of these kids. Um, and I thought the class time was great. Um, did you get a chance to listen to my reflection? Because that reflection was almost as long as my video. But you know, you go through all the points. So I mean, all I want is proficiency across the board. I'm done getting outstandings. I just want proficiency. Um you know, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Um I don't want to I don't want to break my back and you know, it's nice to go overboard sometimes, but I mean, nobody has time to give like 15 outstanding lessons a week. That's a lot of work. And I just want to I don't want to be just good enough, but the way I was feeling this week, and the way what happened to me, um, just good enough is just good enough for me today.
Yeah, I hear you. Um, and you know, when you're done with the program, you're going to get a certificate. And no one ever asked, did you get, you know, basic, proficient, or outstanding in your certificate? The only thing they care about is you have your certificate, so you can use that
Yeah.
to apply for your teaching license. And right, depending on everyone's personal situation, yeah, maybe you don't need the outstanding, maybe proficient um, is all you need just because of time constraints and other responsibilities. So yeah, I definitely get that. Uh, plus, you're so close to the end, right?
Yeah.
Just not bad at all. Nice. So thank you for all of that and the additional background information. I really appreciated it. Because I looked at this through the lens of standards 1, 2, and 3, right? And what I liked or what I saw overall is how you greeted the students from the very beginning with a quick thumbs up, thumbs down to kind of judge, how the class is feeling today, right? So you can from that, depending on your teaching style, you can try to bring in more energy if you know that everyone's a little bit tired or a little bit disinterested, right? It's an easy way to you know
It's the class
modify the
right
beginning.
after lunch too. So it's that
Yeah.
not like it's it's a hard it's a hard it's sometimes it's hard to get them going.
Yeah. Well, it's true, right? And it's also after a break, right? After a long break, it's different. You have different teaching strategies for when your classes are and what's happening at that time with the calendar. So yeah, so totally understandable um, with that. And then I thought you kind of jumped into the instructions or the objectives for the day. You were talking to everyone, and you also put a few things up on the board. And you were talking to the class, and some of the students had some issues. You kind of walked around to help the students with their issues and answered any questions, which I thought was good as well at that start. A couple of things have come up that you were talking about. I want to see if I can integrate those in. Um, yeah, and overall, like you just talked about, I knew there were some technical difficulties, but I really couldn't tell exactly what the extent of the technical difficulties were.
It was a
But I'm glad to hear.
slow
Yeah,
network, slow networks.
and and that's what it is, right? So different parts of the world. But I'm glad you actually tried Nearpod and it was successful despite the technical challenges. So you can see if you move into a different school or a different country, maybe with a better internet connection, how this tool could be useful in order to increase the engagement level. And I like how you used it with the video in order to make sure the students are actually watching the video, understanding what was happening, and then taking or completing these the quiz or whatever at the same time. There's something out there called Ed Puzzle. So there are other tools you could use. So Ed Puzzle, I'm not sure if you've run into Ed Puzzle. Ed Puzzle is a tool where you can take a video, and it's not all videos, but it's usually a video that you create, and you can actually embed questions in that video. So students will have to pause, answer the question before that video restarts.
Okay.
I don't know if that would work in your situation, but I just want to put that tool out there. So there are tools like Ed Puzzle that you could use, especially if students are working on their own. So this way, that they have to watch the video, they have to get to a certain point, they have to answer a question before they can actually get to that next part of the video. So that might come in handy in the future. Right. Something that came up during our, during your summary right now was how you were able to help students, well, understand what was happening by using Nearpod and then going back and reteaching things that, clarifying misconceptions or things that need to be retaught. And I think that's a great way to capture that as well. Questions focus on reading. Yeah, and also you definitely know your students. So right, so standards 1, 2, and 3 is really about the learner. And I think overall you demonstrated that you really know your students, right? The tools that you're using are age appropriate, the terminology is age appropriate, and more than that is that you understand how your students learn, right? So you've given them translated copies, you speak in a very in a slow but understandable manner so they can understand what's going on. It looks like you pause and walk around and clarify any questions. Um, yeah, you definitely understand that English is not the first language, but it's not necessarily an English class. You want the students to learn the content, and it seems like if you need to translate something, translate. I want you to understand the concept,
Yeah.
right? And that's what it is. Uh, it's not an English class where they're perfecting their English. It's understanding the content of the course.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think what that helps, so if they can actually look up things in their native language, it decreases the frustration, and it also makes them enjoy the class a little bit more because they're a little bit more comfortable about, okay, I don't understand what this word means. Let me just take a look at it, or be able to do parts of their activities in Chinese. It's really early processing that information and can explain it back to you. All right, let me just take a look at my other notes. And I have no issues with no sound, because when there's no sound, I can see at the front of the board, I can see you giving instructions, I can see you walking around, at least in that front of the class where the
Yeah.
video is.
Yeah.
And I think
I also sped up some of the video just to show you um what what was going on. I didn't want to make like a 25-minute video, but there was like so much I wanted to show, so I just sped it up.
Mhm. So it's because for me, when I looked at this, you definitely know your students. Great use of technology as well, because that's where the kids live. So you're explaining things on the board. They have their computers in front of them. And from the video, it looked like you're lecturing a bit, but then I got to the end of the video and I actually saw the group work that was actually happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, the lecturing was just to set them up for what they were gonna
Mhm.
do, because I don't know, I just felt like I should teach them teach something, but like one of the students was like, "Wow, I never knew that like Mussolini made their trains run on time in Italy." It's like, but that's what he's famous for. He's famous for making the trains run on time. He did a lot of bad stuff, but that's one of the
Yeah, it's
good things
true.
he did. And I just wanted just to give him some insight. Um, I don't usually talk that much in the class. I
Mhm.
usually let the students. I I did Montessori last year, like
Mhm.
for kindergarten. So like
Mhm.
I apply what I learned in Montessori, which is so student centered, into my teaching. But then I also have to make sure that uh, my administrators know that I'm actually working instead of just guiding. If if I tell them I'm guiding the students, they're like, yeah, but you're not teaching because at the beginning of the year, I got pulled in to an economics class, and they said that this is how we want you to teach. And the guy, he's from the Czech Republic, he just read off a PowerPoint. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
because in China, that's how you're supposed to
Yeah.
teach. And I'm like, that,
Yeah.
I mean, it works for Chinese students, but I mean,
Yep.
if you want me to teach like that, why didn't you just hire a Chinese teacher to teach like that?
Yeah.
And these kids are preparing to go overseas. They're gonna encounter teaching styles like mine, so they may as well get used to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a
That's
little
a
bit of it's
yeah. But
cultural.
sure, it definitely is, and you have to kind of follow the rules and the norms of the school. Um, you don't want to get fired or in trouble for not following the rules of the school. But your point is very valid. Is that if they're staying within the Chinese system, then it's different. But if they're going to if they're going abroad, maybe to more of a Western system, then those Western systems, a lot of them revolve around critical thinking skills, and you need to kind of be exposed to that before then. But even Jack Ma, right, the former CEO of Alibaba, says that hey, if we don't change the way we teach, if we don't teach creativity and critical thinking, then our students today have no hope in the future. So um, there's an understanding of yes, we do need 21st century skills. However, how do you bring that into this Chinese system, especially when you have to take the Gaokao to get into a Chinese school, right? It just doesn't work right now. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, you're right. So you have to have a combination of both. One, you have to lecture, so you're showing something, but two, you want the students collaborating and working together because that's kind of the future of education. And I think from what I've seen is you do a great job, right? You're not up there, you're not lecturing all the time, and then you show me snippets of where everyone's working together. And that also decreases the pressure on you to have a well-defined lesson every class, because if it's student-led, then a lot of times the students will lead the learning, right? So you don't have to have that excellent or exemplary lesson if you have the students solving a problem or looking into something, right? And that's where you can get that break. So sometimes you might have a highly engaging lesson where you put a lot of work into, like creating a Nearpod. And then other times, it might be a little bit more student led, where you can kind of ask a question and take a step back while they're actually putting together an infographic, and that kind of gives you a break. Um,
Yeah, that's what I'm planning for my PBL. I've got my uh rubric all done. I've got my lesson all done, and
yep,
I don't know if I'll probably add it on as like a 5 minute clip at the end of the next video
yep,
because this we'll do this on Thursday. Um,
yeah, and mhm.
but like I'll put a marker saying, this is the PBL section of because Moreland wants us to do a PBL.
Yeah. And when I teach this, it's the same. I get a wide variety of PBLs. Usually, if you're in an inquiry-based curriculum like the IB, like maybe if you're teaching PYP, then I get a full-on PBL because that's how that program's taught. I've had a lot of candidates coming through, obviously the Chinese system with high school students, and their PBLs are definitely more teacher directed, just because of the nature of the culture, like you're mentioning. And so it might not be a full PBL, just because of the challenges that you'll face, because usually a PBL is over days, weeks, or even months, depending on the scope. Um, but I always ask my candidates just to explain that, okay, what would they do if they were in a different school system where you could actually run a PBL? Right. Yeah. It's it's challenging. It's a challenging assignment depending on the school and the culture and the direction of the admin and the curriculum that the school is using. Um,
Yeah,
but it's
I might I
yeah.
might just film the grade 11s because we're teaching the same content. Next year,
Mhm.
uh, they'll be moving up to grade 12. But I usually do like a test. I do a test run of my lessons with my grade 11s before I film the grade 12s,
Nice.
just just to see if I can tweak, uh, if I need to tweak something or if something could be better, or because the kids' levels are about the same, but their
Mhm.
maturity is very different. Um, so this week I'll do my PBL with my grade 11s.
Okay.
We've already had I took a whole class, walked them through Canva, had
Mhm.
them. So we had 40 minutes with Canva. Um,
Mhm.
I told them what I was thinking about doing. Um, took their suggestions, showed them what I wanted them to do. They gave me feedback. They said, "Well, we don't like this, this, and this, but this is good and this is good." So it's pretty much all student driven.
Nice.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so that's about it.
Good, good, good. So overall, you're funny that you mentioned proficient because that's kind of where I've marked you for standards one, two, and three. Um,
Anything I can work on?
I'm taking a look right now. Well, maybe I'll move you up in that one. So I do think you create a positive classroom environment, and I do think you make learners feel valued. I mean, I do think it's a climate of mutual respect. And the reason why I say that is because you greet the students when they come in and you ask them questions, right? So that's one way of trying to create a positive classroom environment. You listen to students' opinions, you give support when you need to. So for this lesson, if you take this lesson, for example, uh, I can't remember who it was, but one of the girls had a question early on, and you pause the lesson, you go and you support the student. And that's what you want, right? You want to be able to listen to students. You want to stop the lesson when you need to, and then help them. You definitely show knowledge about the differences in culture with your class. Didn't see anything about accommodations, but we can have that conversation.
We don't have any plans. They don't acknowledge any and I'm not qualified to even guess whether a student has
Yeah.
anything because I don't have the educational background on that. So the only accommodations I can make are for language. Um,
Hmm.
just because even like my son, it took a lot of fighting to get my wife to take him to go get tested to see if he was ADHD like me.
Sure.
And that was a lot. That took 2 years. That took 2 years to of fighting at home to do. So
Right.
I could only imagine suggesting to a parent here that like, hey, maybe your your kid should get tested. Although I do tell all my grade 12 students, when you go to school like in the States, go to the Center for Students with Disabilities. Uh, it's a
Mhm,
free test. You might be able to get some money out of it, some grants. Um, and if there's nothing wrong with you, you just spend a
mhm,
couple of hours, and if not, they can help you. But that's about as
yeah,
much as I can do. Um, there's there's nothing. Um, there's a couple of kids who aren't good at handwriting, but we're using the computers in class. So like everyone is like on the same level. So I guess some are using tablets and some are using computers, but um, there nobody is at an advantage or disadvantage over each other. They're all
mhm,
basically on the same playing field, and that's what I want.
nice. Yeah, I totally understand that. Um, yeah, and accommodations could also be, um, well, you give accommodations. For example, you allow the students to translate or look at things in Chinese. That's an accommodation as well. Do you have any interaction with families?
We're not allowed, as I
That's what I
mentioned
thought.
in my
Yeah.
thing. If if we were, I'd encourage some of those slower kids. I'd offer the parents, your son or daughter, if they want to stay after school, I'm more than willing to like stay with them and work stuff out with them. It's
Mhm.
fine with me. I don't mind taking the time. But the school doesn't let us talk to the parents at all.
So with parent teacher conferences, you're not included probably. It's just probably
No.
Chinese,
Yeah.
right? Yep.
Um, there was
Okay.
a at the kindergarten I work at, there's a there was a family from India,
Hmm.
and every day I walked into their son's class, he was crying. He was like beside himself. And I was I made the mistake of approaching his parents and saying, "Hey, is everything okay?" Because like in my class,
Oh.
he's oh, then I got pulled into the principal's office and screamed at for like 25 minutes. So that was the last time I did that.
Yeah, that's
But
unfortunate.
I was coming from a place of caring, but they didn't
Yeah.
see it that way. They saw that,
Yeah.
I was causing trouble, and I'm like, well, like my son, he's half Chinese, and he has a hard time, and this kid's full on Indian, and he's very he looks so different than his classmates, and
Sure.
I was just, checking in, making sure everything was okay. And like his parents were really okay with that, but the school wasn't. So no, we're not allowed to talk to the parents. But if I were, there would be a couple of students I would be like, they could like stay after school or like at lunchtime or before school. Um, they could, have like a study team and we could work on some stuff, some study skills and stuff.
Yeah.
But in a perfect world, we would have parent teacher meetings. But this is not a
Nice.
perfect.
Okay. Yeah, no, just it's just the way it is. There's nothing you could do about that. And you here's the thing. In the last criteria that I'm looking at is learning environment, and it talks about creating a strong presence of norms and procedures. So, even though you haven't really put up any norms and procedures, I think in what you do, you have a strong presence of norms and procedures. I think it's just kind of built into your lesson. And I think it also helps having the older kids as well who've gone through year after year of norms and procedures. They know how to act, especially in the Chinese culture as well. But I think
It
your classroom.
it's
Mhm.
more I think it's more internalized
Yeah.
with them because um like at the beginning of the year, I think that's when we did norms and procedures. So like so I
Yep.
was all like gung ho trying to get it and then we came up with classroom rules. Um and then yeah, I don't have any behavioral issues. Like in my cohort, I heard some like scary stories. And like, dude, just show me your teacher look. And they're like, What's a teacher look?" I'm like, well, it's a look you develop over time when the kid is misbehaving. You just give them a little look, and they know. And so if you have kids, then you've got the father or the mother look, which is an escalation of the teacher look. And that's when I give my son when he's uh not
Sure.
not doing what he's supposed to. And but you're right, they're they're great falls. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have any issues. They tried to push me a little bit in September, and I pushed back, and I think I barked at them in Chinese, and then they kind of just like okay, because I was a new teacher for at the school. This is my first year at the school, so I guess they wanted to see how much I would take before I would snap.
Yeah, that's
And
funny. Of course, that, yep. Yeah, that's true. But overall, Andrew, good job.
so I will see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's fine. Just, like you did this time, just, send me the information up front. I'll review it. I'm going to try to put your comments in right now. Right now, that's one of my weaknesses is I'll talk to you, I'll have my comments written out, and then I disappear and I'm like, oh my goodness, sorry, I forgot to do this. So I'm going to try to get that done for you. Toot sweet.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Have a great week. Or
Okay, you too.
have a great 2 weeks.
And yeah, you too. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Bye.